guys. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Very nice to meet you. You want an orange? Yeah. Come on, let's go. Smell good?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. Now here, I'm going to talk for like 3 minutes. Can you guys act like old kids for 3 minutes? Not going crazy? All right. First of all, we're thrilled to be here. I do think, unfortunately, look at the prices here. Things are way too expensive. And they're way too expensive because of Kamala Harris's policies. I mean, look, guess buddy, you want some eggs? Let's talk about eggs, because these guys actually eat about 14 eggs every single morning. Is that right?
Yeah.
Whoa. We'll be careful about this. Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policies. Yeah. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate it. Very nice to meet you. You want an orange? Yeah. Come on, let's go. Smell good?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, guys. Now here, I'm going to talk for like 3 minutes. Can you guys act like old kids for 3 minutes? Not going crazy? All right. First of all, we're thrilled to be here. I do think, unfortunately, look at the prices here. Things are way too expensive. And they're way too expensive because of Kamala Harris's policies. I mean, look, guess buddy, you want some eggs? Let's talk about eggs, because these guys actually eat about 14 eggs every single morning. Is that right?
Yeah.
Whoa. We'll be careful about this. Eggs, when Kamala Harris took office, were short of $1.50 a dozen. Now a dozen eggs will cost you around $4 thanks to Kamala Harris's inflationary policy. Now look, I don't know if y'all have noticed, but Kamala Harris does this interesting thing where the only time she speaks before the American people is when she's got a teleprompter right in front of her. And I think it's because she has no idea what to say unless somebody else is writing her lines for her. Isn't that a disgrace? Now she will, I'll give Kamala Harris a little bit of credit, because over the past 50 days, now don't run me out of town yet. I said I'd give her a little bit of credit. I give Kamala Harris a little bit of credit, because she's given 2 interviews over 50 days of being the Democratic Party's nominee. Now, I think I've figured out the secret, though. The reason Kamala doesn't get very many interviews is because every time she does, I think we pick up about 100,000 votes. So I guess Kamala's attitude is better hide from the American people. But Kamala Harris, there is no hiding from the wisdom of the voters of Pennsylvania, and in 44 days, you're fired. Now, it's so funny. I talk to the president, of course, all the time, and he and I think, figured it out a few days ago. Kamala Harris, she's running from every position that she has ever had. Now, she said she ran on defunding the police, and while she's been vice president, there's been no vice president in this country's history who's more anti-law enforcement. But now she says she didn't mean it. Now, 3.5 years ago, Kamala Harris said that she wanted to ban fracking. And how would that go over for the workers of Pennsylvania? Not very well at all. But now Kamala Harris says, well, she didn't mean it. Three and a half years ago, Kamala Harris suspended deportations. She stopped Donald Trump's wildly successful Remain in Mexico policy. And she radically increased asylum fraud in this country, opening the southern border and flooding communities like this one with deadly fentanyl and a lot of crime. But now Kamala Harris says, no, I didn't mean to do that. And we figured it out. She can't be trusted. You're exactly right. But I think what I've figured out is that Kamala Harris knows that she's not going to win this race, so she's auditioning for my job. And I told the president, sir, you got to be worried because she's going to show up at one of these rallies with a long red tie and a Make America Great Again hat. But here in Pennsylvania and all across our country, we are not going to let Kamala Harris forget that she opened the border, that she went to war with the police, that she tried to ban fracking, and she is fired on November the 5th, and we're not going to let her get away from it. We went to a grocery store, and I said, well, another reward is that you can pick anything you want in this grocery store, and I assume, of course, that they want a piece of candy. But again, my 7-year-old, he's just like his mother. He's very, very practical. He's what they call a type A personality. And I'm talking about grocery prices, which we'll get to in a second, and the media's sitting there, and my son tugs on my shirt, and he says, Dad, we need eggs. And I said, son, when I said you could get anything, I thought maybe you meant like a Snickers bar or something. He said, Dad, you used the last 3 eggs this morning. We got to get eggs. So I'm like, all right, son, we'll get an ice cream sandwich, and I will get a dozen eggs. And that's exactly what we did. But, you know, it reminded me, a dozen eggs, almost $4 in the state of Pennsylvania. You know, when Donald Trump was president, you know what a dozen eggs cost in this country? About $1.50. In the state of Pennsylvania, one of the worst, actually, I didn't know this until recently. You know, y'all have had one of the worst grocery price inflation in the entire country. A gallon of milk costs $4.28. Thanks, Kamala Harris. A dozen eggs costs almost $4. Thanks, Kamala Harris. A price of ground beef went from just shy of $4 a pound to $6 a pound because Kamala Harris cast the deciding vote on the Inflation Explosion Act. And as Kamala Harris, she is, you know, my friends, I haven't been in politics long enough to be as shameless as Kamala Harris and stand before the people of Pennsylvania and America and say on day one, she's going to tackle the affordability crisis affecting American families. Kamala, day one was 1,400 days ago. What the hell have you been doing that whole time? If she wants to do something to fix the very problem she created, there is nothing stopping her. You get to work right now, Kamala Harris. Stop talking about what you're going to do and actually go out there and do it. Now, it's not just grocery prices. It's everything is more expensive in this country. Americans cannot afford to live a good life in this country because of Kamala Harris's policies. It's crazy. Now think about this. Donald Trump and I believe in a very simple principle, that if you work hard and play by the rules, you ought to be able to get ahead in this country that all of us love. Isn't that simple?